I was born with cerebral palsy. Um, the in really layman's terms, the part of my brain that controls my balance and coordination is damaged, so that the messages don't always get through correctly to from my brain to the rest of my body. It affects, all four limbs, a little bit my voice. But I grew up in a small town in Ohio where, this waited for mainstreaming. I was just out there with the kids in my neighborhood and sort of grew up with them. Um when I graduated high school, I thought I was going to go to college, become a youth pastor. Found out a lot of colleges, a lot of churches weren't sure how to hire somebody with disability, so I started ministry to help churches sort of figure out how to minister to people with disabilities, and did that for a while. Um, so I've been doing disability ministry in one form or another for about 40 years.
And it was through the Disability Ministry Connections that we met. Johnny had invited each of us when we were working at different ministries to come to a conference, and we were there. Our names are on the same list with 40 people. I remember him, he doesn't really remember me a lot. And then the next year there were 1,000 people at this conference, and we connected with a small group of people that all seemed to know each other, and we just were conference buddies from there. But we've been married now for 26 years, and it all was because of disability. And I did not grow up with a disability, but I, like Jerry, grew up in the time when mainstreaming didn't happen, but yet my church had mainstreamed some kids into youth group. My school was mainstreaming some people into the school system. And so I grew up just always around people with disabilities as my friends. In fact, one of the guys I went to high school with has also at CP and a similar look to Jerry. And at my last class reunion, a few people thought I had married the guy from high school, but I didn't.
In my home church growing up, the youth directors or the youth sponsors in the high school youth group decided that everybody in town should be part of the youth group, including the shy kid in the wheelchair, which nobody, it's a surprise that some people think I'm shy, but I am, but they kept inviting me, I finally went to a pizza party, which is no surprise. But when I got there, I realized that they had something I wanted, that they accepted me as I am, and actually became a leader in the youth group, which is what led to me going to Bible college. So I was very accepted in my home church.
Well, and the other thing your home church did, again, it was a small church in Northwest Ohio, and it had about 8 or 12 steps to get up to the church. Everything was on this upper level. And many times the elders and men from the church would carry Jerry as a youngster in his wheelchair up the steps. But there came a time when it was difficult for these men as they grew older and Jerry grew older for them to carry him up the steps. So they put together the money, they did drives and got the money, and they put an elevator in the church for Jerry to be able to be engaged in all that was going on there.
Yeah, so those are positive things. I in working with churches over the years and going to churches, there are some churches that kind of look at my disability and don't have very high expectations. They assume that I'm one of the shut-ins, or they assume what they think my abilities are before they really get to know me. But I try not to dwell on that because I can't worry about what people think I can't do. I need to focus my energies on what I believe God is calling me to do. So,
well, and I think also on that encouraged or discouraged, we're always encouraged when we go visit a new church and the greeters or the elders, or whoever's there at the door, I think I meant ushers, not elders, but they will ask us, where would you like to sit? Can we make arrangements for, and they'll move chairs if they have movable chairs or they have multiple pew cuts and we go there. It's a little more discouraging when we roll in and they say, well, here we have a spot for you right in the back row. And if that's the only place that's there, we don't necessarily feel as welcome and engaged into the whole congregation. We understand that some churches can only do that with their architectural layout, but those are some things that change. The other thing is always, can we get to the restroom? Can we find a family restroom? Because there are some times that I need to assist Sherry. And so is there a place that we can go together? We've been to a couple churches in another state where there weren't any restrooms that Jerry could get to, whether they were family or not. And that means that we only visit that church once.
Well, or if we do visit them, we visit them for short periods of time.
Yes.
You know, there's a church here in town that has some events that might be of interest to me, but there are no accessible bathrooms at all. So, you know, I'm not going to take advantage of those opportunities because I can't guarantee I won't need to go to the bathroom while I'm there. So, yeah. So it does make a difference.
I think the other thing that you've been encouraged by is when you preach at a lot of churches as a pulpit supplier, filled in, more pre-COVID than now, but still, that's always an encouragement when a church is not afraid to have you come preach.
And the advantage of me doing that is they see me using my gifts, and that sort of opens the door for them to get to know me. It got me into the ministry God wanted me to. Well, as I said, you know, I went to Bible college for a youth pastor and did a couple of youth internships while I was in college, and I did okay at those, but I wasn't the world's greatest youth minister. But I began to see that maybe God could use me to change the church's attitude toward the disabled or give them a positive picture of somebody with a disability or point them in the right direction. And it was that transition from graduating college to figuring out what I'm going to do that led me to what we're currently doing now.
And I was similar. I went to a Christian college and graduated with degree in youth ministry and Christian education and thought I'd be working in a church. But at the ripe old age of 21, I didn't feel like I was mature enough to have the spiritual responsibility for all those kids. So I took what I thought was an easier job and went to work in a group home with multiply handicapped children.
Which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, and it was hard physical work, but it actually was probably as hard or harder spiritually because it was a very ungodly environment and the director did things that should never be done with anyone, let alone children who have disabilities. And so I needed to get out of that place quickly, but I also knew that I'd fallen in love with people with disabilities. And so that would transition to me into finding a Christian residential arrangement that I could work at that I really enjoyed. And then it was through there that I just continued to go, met people in disability ministry and broader than residential church ministry. I had opportunities to create church ministries, and then it just kind of mushroomed from there. Jerry and I met and God took it, and here we are today.
26 years later, or 26 years in November.
Yeah.
Lots of ways. The biggest blessing is the people that have given me their hands and feet. There are times when Joan is away or Joan is sick, and I've got phone numbers of guys that I can call and say, hey, I need help getting up and going to bed. So, you know, getting up is about an hour and a half process. Going to bed is about 45 minutes to an hour. The guys I can call to help me do that, and all through the years, all through college, I had guys who helped get me up in the morning, those sorts of things. That's a big deal. I mean, the fact that students would volunteer to take care of someone my first semester, someone they didn't even know is is unheard of. In fact, I'm not sure in the age of political correctness and lawyers and stuff if that would even be allowed today, but it was a real ministry to me. And also the people who saw gifts in me before I saw them, that was a real door opener, a real opportunity for me. One time I was at a youth convention and there was a what we probably call a teaching contest. Back then we called it a preaching contest. And one of the youth directors said, "You would be good at that. You should try that." And it's like, "You're kidding," but I tried it and I did pretty well. So the people that said, the people and who still come along and say, "Jerry, you can do this. Just go do it. Don't, just like I've never done it before. Do I really think I'm good at it?" It's like, but if I try stuff, I get better at it.
And I think the question, it kind of more, Jerry, even his answer sort of more. For people with disabilities, our life and our ministry life intertwine all the time. And so helping us in our personal life by doing things like helping him get ready periodically or giving me a break, or people who come over and will paint the marks in our home or in our office where the wheelchair sometimes hits it as we're going through a hallway or something. Those are huge blessings. People who do a lot of are willing to do physical hands-on stuff to give me more time to focus on the ministry and focus on my husband. I put those in reverse order, sorry. But those are huge blessings to us, whether it's weeding or filling a car with gas or whatever it might be. Of course, we don't want to overlook the people who pray for us in ministry, the people who volunteer with us, type for Jerry, serve on our boards, people who provide financial gifts to the Lord to allow the ministry to go forward. There's just really, we tell people, if there's something you think you want to do, tell us and we'll figure out a way we can use it in the ministry.
That's right. The more volunteers, the more you can do in ministry. It's worth the effort to try to figure those things out. Our ministry is Luke 14 Exchange. It is based on the story in Luke 14 of the great banquet. The banquet where the banquet master sent out his servants to tell the people to come to the banquet, and everybody made excuses why they couldn't come. So the banquet master said, "Forget those people, go out in the highways and byways and bring the lame, the poor, the blind, and bring them into the banquet." So our mission is to bring people with disabilities to the banquet table, to fill the banquet table with people with disabilities. And there's 3 exchanges we want those people to make. One is we want them to exchange without God,
a life without God,
to a life with God through Jesus Christ. We want them to exchange a life of isolation for a life in Christian community. And we want people with disabilities to understand God has given them gifts. So we want them to exchange a life of low expectation with a life
abundant in Jesus Christ.
A life of purpose in Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So we do that through a few ways. Jerry mentors people with disabilities. Actually, I do too, but more people with disabilities are talking with Jerry. So he mentors and coaches them as they're trying to see what God has for them in their life. I primarily work with families and just provide encouragement and a listening ear to family members who need to chat about life in their family. Together, we have a prayer ministry with people with disabilities and getting others to pray for people with disabilities. And then we certainly come alongside any church who wants to know how they can do something a little bit better and stronger.
And there's a week camp we work at every year. We're part of the leadership team. There's some other ministry events that other ministries do, but they bring us in for parts of those. So we try to be the hands and feet of Jesus wherever the opportunities are that he gives us. Boy, I thought about that question. I think it boils down to this. I, as a person with a disability, am more like you than different than you. My disability is a part of me, it doesn't define me. You know, we could, you know, if we were together in a room, list out on a whiteboard several ways that I'm different because of growing up with a disability, or even today, differences. But we can fill libraries of ways that we're the same. And it's great when professionals who are trained in disability work with people with disabilities, but it's even more phenomenal what God does when we see the person with disability in the next pew over or the next house over in the neighborhood and ask God, how can you use me to minister to them? And what are some ways, as you get to know the person, what are their gifts and how they can use those gifts?
And I think what I tell people is just do it. You will have so much fun, first of all, and I know that's not the reason we serve in the church or serve God, but you will have fun as you get to know a new person as a friend and you're serving alongside them. You will also come to know more about the heart of God as you see life through their eyes, and together you guys experience more of the fullness of the body of Christ. So just do it.